Enabling 3D on a layer is the first step in trying to create a little more depth in your project. But the second step is actually adding lights into the project. Go to the timeline and you'll notice all of the layers currently exist in 3D space. Start at the bottom, click and drag up over the layers to select them all, and press P to open the position data. I like to pay attention to where the layers exist in Z space, especially when I'm looking straight on, because I really don't have much of a sense of perspective right now. The top two layers are closer to us by 100 pixels. So press P again to hide the position data and click at the bottom of the timeline to deselect all those layers. Let's add a light to the scene to create more perspective. Go up under the Layer menu and choose New, Light. There are 4 different kinds of lights inside of After Effects, so click on the Light Type drop-down, and let's start with the Parallel Light. I'll give you a quick rundown of each of the different lights. A parallel light is an excellent light if you want to cast an even light, but have a direction set behind it. It doesn't spread out like light coming from a light bulb. It's more of an even directional light, similar to light from the sun. Click on the drop-down and choose Spotlight. This behaves very much like a typical stage light, where you can control the angle of the cone of light and the softness of the feather. There is fall off on this light, and you can cast shadows. Now your light settings might be different than mine. That's perfectly fine. Lights have a tendency to remember whatever the previous settings were used the last time that light was created. Go back up under the Light Type drop-down and choose Point Light. Point Light has no cone angle or feather, but I can adjust the intensity. It throws light in all directions, very much like a light bulb without a lampshade. Let me explain Fall Off for a quick second. Click on the drop-down for Fall Off, and you could choose None if you didn't want the light to have fall off. 9 times out of 10, I choose Smooth because it renders the fastest. If you want realistic shadows, choose Inverse Square Clamped. Let me explain Smooth. With Smooth selected, the radius of 500 means the light at 100% intensity is going to go out 500 pixels. And then it's going to start falling off in intensity for another 500 pixels until it gets to an intensity of 0. Okay, go back up under Light Type, and let's choose the Ambient Light. This is a great way to just add overall brightness to a scene, or if you choose a negative value, you can darken a scene. Now click on the drop-down and let's choose Spotlight. I'll leave the color set to white, and I'll leave all these other settings the same. Intensity 100, cone angle 90, cone feather 50, fall off smooth, radius 500, fall off distance 500. I enabled cast shadows, and I set my shadows to 75% darkness with a diffusion of 10 pixels. When I click OK, the light's been added to the scene and it's kind of hard to see what's going on. In the timeline, since the light is selected, we can just press T to open the intensity settings for that light. Click and drag to the right to increase the intensity of that light. If you press AA rather quickly, you'll get all the light options. To try and soften up the edges of this light, let's click on the cone angle and scrub and see if that makes much of a difference. And it really doesn't. I have a sneaking suspicion the issue is the fall off radius. So I'm going to go down to the radius setting for the fall off and click and drag to increase the radius of the fall off. And sure enough, the light wasn't getting far enough to actually reach our background. Let's go ahead and crank up the radius to 1160. Now we can also increase the cone angle to a value of about 141. So I have a radius of 1160, cone angle of 141, and I'll bring the intensity back down to a normal level around 112. Maybe not that little. Let's do 125. There we go. Now we have a really nice highlight on this area. In order to fill in the edges, let's add another light. I'll go up to the Layer menu and choose New, Light, and this time, instead of a spotlight, let's click on the drop-down and just add an ambient light. We'll bring the intensity for that ambient light down to around 42 and click OK, and that should definitely brighten up the scene there a little bit. Now that the background's under control, let's see if we can add more dimension by having the logo and the word cast a shadow. Collapse layer 2 and select both layers 3 and 4. Click on one, hold down Shift, and click on the other. Press AA rather quickly on your keyboard to open the material options. Then enable Cast Shadows. Select layer 2 and press P to open the position. And let's scrub on the X parameter and bring it over to the side just a little bit so the shadow kind of pops off the side. Now the logo's definitely popping off the background. And remember, if you want to adjust how light interacts in a scene, it's a balancing act between the light settings and the material options of the layers that the light is illuminating.